Pillar, we're here thanks to EirGrid, who are the timing sponsors of the All-Ireland Championships. First off, Dublin, they've won their 2 games by 13 points and now 18 points as well. Have you been impressed with what you've seen?
Yeah, look, the year has probably panned out as I would have expected. I didn't think there was going to be a huge threat in Leinster. The games there were won by cricket scores. They didn't really get tested. And once the Super 8s were rolled out in terms of the groupings, I felt Cork were going to need to improve an awful lot, which they did, and they put a serious test up to them for up to 60 minutes. I thought Cork were very good. Roscommon, I never felt they were really going to get in Dublin's face. I think they were, it's a big step up for Roscommon to be taking on Dublin. And look, obviously it's their own game. If it had to come in the first or second game, it might have been more competitive. They're both qualified now, so they're both in the semi-final. Will they have an eye on a bigger game 7 days ahead? I think the mentality with Dublin will be, look, let's go and win the group. Let's, take the winning mentality forward. And doesn't matter who they play. I expect Kerry to top the other group and Donegals to come through as well. So, that's where the serious test is coming, I think.
Yeah, see, I was trying to think, how do you analyse Dublin's performance against Roscommon? Where are you going well, where are you not going well? But like the way I was thinking of it, it's like an avalanche. How do you analyse the devastation? It's so utterly complete.
Yeah.
Everything just looks perfect at the moment. Is there anything at all where you think that's a slight worry?
Yeah, perfect's not a word now. It'll be attaching with any of the performances so far. Big margins at the end, but I thought when Cork ran hard at Dublin, particularly in the first 20 minutes of the game, Dublin were at sea. I would think getting Johnny Cooper and James McCarthy back into the defence has added a huge bit of pace, which is obviously what required, as well as being great defenders. So, what sixth Jim puts out in defence is an issue, and then look, the bench is not having the impact that it had. We don't have the same colour, we don't have the same age profile coming in. It's interesting to see that Paddy Small is the go-to player now. He's the only player who's come on in all 5 matches from the bench. But Paddy Small is very untested at the higher level and the higher end of things. It's going to be a big ask for him to come in to an All-Ireland semi-final. So really, Jim is working off 7 forwards. It was Cormac Hostler or Dean Rock. And the other 5 picked themselves, and then who's coming in to make the big impact off the bench? Bernard Brogan hasn't got any game time this year, so it'd be hard to see Bernard featuring going forward. Same with Owen O'Gara. Kevin Mack and Paddy Andrews have got a bit of game time. Are either of them having the same impact that they had 2 or 3 years ago? Father time doesn't improve your pace, takes a little bit away from you each year, so and then the X factor is going to be Dermo Connolly.
It was always going to come to that, but clearly this was his plan B, because he was going to go to Boston. The forms weren't filled out or whatever happened. As if you've been in that position before, the eyes of the country are on you as Dublin manager. I think in some ways it's been convenient, because all year, when it should be talk of 5 in a row constantly, all the talk is of a player that's not involved in the setup, which means all the players who are trying to win the 5 in a row aren't being talked about. So do you think Jim Gavin has made the right decision bringing him back, or was it better off just leaving him off, because at this stage everyone would have just assumed, he's not going to be back?
Who can question Jim Gavin? Jim has really quality people around him, Declan Darcy is a tried and tested. He's been with Jim since day one back in 2002 when he came in with the 21 team. So he'd be a fierce, solid sounding board. Obviously Paul Clark, who I know fierce well, is in there again, would be a very solid guy. Jason's in there, would obviously have a strong opinion on these things as well. Shane O'Hanlon. So I'd say that was his first sounding board. But look, if you're asking me, Shane, was it a hard question? The answer is no. Dermo Connolly is not like any normal player. He's an ability that we rarely see in a player, where his headspace is at in terms of he was going to America, that's a fact. He didn't go to America, that's also a fact. So once he became available, I'd say it was a no-brainer. Jim is trying to win this year's All-Ireland. For some guys, this is their first All-Ireland. For other guys, it's their second. For Dublin as an entity, they're trying to create history that has never been done by a great Kilkenny team that didn't get over the line, or a phenomenal Kerry team that didn't get over the line. So I would say, when Jim weighed it all up, it was probably a no-brainer. Rory O'Carroll came back in. Has he added value to the setup? Probably in training matches. Probably gave Jim an option for a bigger full back if it was required. Tommy Walsh hasn't seen much game time, so maybe Rory isn't going to be required much going forward. But up front, I would think, look, if Jim's only picking from really 7 forwards, and the impact he's not happy with coming off the bench, maybe this was a clear signal to him. Look, maybe Dermot can get up to speed. He's played a lot of football with Vincent throughout the year. He scored 2 goals in his last 2 appearances in league games. So I would say Dermot is going to push himself up the pecking order and will be an option for Jim. Maybe not as a starting role, but certainly as an X factor coming off the bench.
Do you think there's any way that it could disrupt a couple of the guys that are in there already, that they're probably going to slip down the pecking order further because he's after coming in? Like Bernard Brogan, you probably saw him play for the club this year during April. I'm sure he's unbelievably disappointed not to be used against Roscommon, and now probably Jim O'Connelly jump ahead of him in the pecking order.
Yeah, but look, Shane, you've been a player yourself. I was a sub often enough for myself to know and realise, if you're thinking that way selfishly, you're probably not much good to the panel. Like, this is about Dublin and the bigger picture, trying to do something that's quite unique. Whatever private feelings fellas will have, I think they may keep to themselves, because there's a bigger picture here, and the bigger picture is the best players should be playing with Dublin, and if Dermot Connolly proves himself to be in the top 20 players over the next 2 or 3 weeks, well, then he'd be fighting hard for the jersey to get game time.
And I suppose when you think about it, the last time he played for Dublin in the Championship, the All-Ireland final a couple of years ago, he did, and there's probably no one else on the panel that could really do that.
No, and like Dermot ticks a lot of boxes in that. You can play him at 13, 14, 15. You can also play him at 10, 11, 12. And he can actually go and play midfield for you, because he's big enough and good enough in the air to contest kickouts. So he ticks a lot of boxes that a lot of the other players that we've mentioned don't. And look, anybody who doesn't think Dermot Connolly can add impact to this Dublin team doesn't know Dermot Connolly as a player.
You mentioned some of the backroom team there. I think you named about 5 different names between Declan Darcy, Jason and a few others. How big are backroom teams now compared with when you were manager?
So, you need.
This isn't just a pop at Dublin, because overall it seems to be.
Even at club level,
yeah.
You can see backroom teams go, look, the players feed off information now. You don't have proper information without having stats, without having video analysis. So there's an area that has evolved hugely over the last 10 to 15 years. At the level they're operating at, you need physios, you need doctors. So, but in terms of expertise, gone is the day of a 2-man management team managing an inter-county team. It doesn't even happen at club level anymore.
How many would you have had when you were over Dublin? Yourself as a couple of selectors?
Yeah, I had Davy Billins, God be good to him. I had Brian Talty, and I had Paul Clark. That was officially my management team. I also brought in Ski Wade as a defensive coach. I brought in Kieran Duff as a forwards coach. So they were very much part of the journey. I would have 2 kit men, Davy Hendricks and Tony Boylan, who are both still there, putting their shoulder to the wheel. I would have a full-time physio with us, John Murphy, did a brilliant job during my tenure. We had a doctor with us, Professor Jerry McElvaney, again did a phenomenal job with us for the 4 years. And then in the stats team, Ray Boyne covered an awful lot. Another guy, Dave Whelan, who did a personal development and behind the scenes stuff with guys. So yeah,
probably double or triple that now.
Yeah, you don't see them, so you don't know. Yeah. But look, this it has grown and grown. But the one thing I would say is, look, all these guys are volunteers. We had a team doctor who never took a penny for 4 years, a professor coming from Beaumont every evening, Jerry McElvaney, a wonderful guy, mad about the GA, a Monaghan man, and he was only too happy to attend all our training sessions, all our challenge matches, and was an invaluable source to us, and to this day I'll be very, very fond of that guy.
What about the Super 8? So we're coming into the final round of games. Dublin and Tyrone, they're already through. Cork and Roscommon, they're already out. Meath are already out. So there are only 3 teams who have it all on the line coming into the last game, and one of them is against a team that doesn't have anything on the line. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're a bit hard on ourselves when we judge how competitive we need, the All Irelands to be. We're kidding ourselves if we think there's 8 teams are going to win the All Ireland every year. And you look across a broad spectrum of sports like the Premiership, the Champions League. There's not this clatter of people or teams that are capable of winning these competitions. A lot of people compete in them, but in terms of, so we're a bit unlucky that Cork could have turned over Tyrone, and we would have having all games having something on the table going into the last game. Albeit that there is. Second group is hugely competitive, and it's gone down to the wire. I think that's a good day's work. I think the Super 8 as a concept works as it does in the hurling in the round robin. It's more games at the right time of the year. So I think it is the way forward. Maybe a little bit of a tweak, and maybe the neutral game has to be taken out of Croke Park and put around to the provincial venues. Croke Park doesn't translate well with 30 or 40,000. It needs the 60 plus thousand to really feel that the supporters are involved in the games. And look, one-sided games are never a great spectacle anyway.
No. Who do you think is most likely to challenge Dublin for this All Ireland?
I think Dublin are, leaving aside that both themselves and Tyrone are qualified. I think they're going to have 2 huge games. I expect Donegal to finish second in that group, and I expect Kerry to win it. Which would lead, if Dublin beat Tyrone, a Dublin Donegal semi-final, and I would expect Kerry to come through the other side. And I think, look, 2 huge tasks ahead of 2 serious teams that would be capable on their day of beating Dublin.
So you think Donegal will win in Mayo?
Yeah.
Just because Mayo seem to be stumbling along?
Yeah, I think Mayo it'll be a phenomenal achievement for James Horden to get them to an All-Ireland semi-final. The list of injuries they carry and the number of games they've played, the fatigue they're shown. I think the resilience of that group has to be admired. But, have they enough to beat Donegal and then to beat Dublin in an All-Ireland semi-final? No, I don't think so.
As a Dublin man, would you be worried about the forward lines of Donegal? But I know Jamie Brennan didn't have his best game, but Jamie Brennan, Michael Murphy, Paddy McBurty, a couple more guys who are good shooters.
Ryan McHugh, you have to mention in that category. I great respect for Donegal, and some of these new guys that we hadn't heard of before, shooting the lights out. I think they're a serious team, Donegal.
Oisin Gallen as well. What about Kerry then? David Clifford he was subdued for a long time by Stephen McMenamin.
Yeah,
but he's obviously class. Paul Ganey, Stephen O'Brien.
Yeah, no. So Kerry, look, Kerry are coming, and they're not coming to win an All Ireland. They're coming to win All Irelands. They are going to eventually take over from Dublin.
Do you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I was down at the National League game in Tralee and hugely impressed with them that night. I just think the quality of players they're coming with, the number of players, the depth of their squad, and they're coming with pacey players. These young guys are suited to Croke Park. I've no doubt that they are coming.
Donegal were missing a number of players with injury, and even Jason McGee went off in the first half. Kerry, meanwhile, are missing David Moore and Jack Barry. So do you think that those 2 things sort of cancelled each other out, and Kerry are actually stronger than what we saw in that drawn game?
Yeah, no, look, if you ask me for a pecking order, I'd say it's 1 Dublin, 2 Kerry and 3 Donegal. That's the way I'd see it.
Right.
I think Kerry have that X factor, and they have a greater depth to them. James O'Donoghue was also missing. So no, they're coming with a serious artillery.
And if you were to pick your current top runner for Footballer of the Year, who do you think it is?
Great question. Yeah, look, if Donegal get to an All-Ireland final, very, very hard to look beyond Michael Murphy. I think pound for pound, he can do it all. He can go into full back line and catch balls. He can catch kickouts, he can be physical, he can play in the edge, he can take frees, he can lead the team. I just think pound for pound he's been the best player this year. Obviously David Clifford, fierce exciting talent. We're going to enjoy watching him over the next few years. And look, Dublin, Mannion's having a great season. Jack Mack catches your eye every time. Little unsung hero over Dublin this year has been Brian Howard. I think he's man for man. He's done a great job for Dublin, game on game. But look, these things evolve and change quickly in semi-finals and finals. So someone's out there waiting to grab this mantle.
Thanks, Pillar.
Cheers.